One other area where it seems like AI could be useful is in the explanation of results. So
Yes.
have you put in any thought into how you go from results to some kind of interpretation if you want to do reporting?
Absolutely. There has been, there have been experiments in the more broadly in the analytics industry for, I want to say, almost a decade now, with just generated narratives around data. Before we had the current generation of generative AI, these were often very kind of dry, like they were often templated, where you had kind of pre-written text and then maybe kind of you changed some adjectives based on if the number was positive or negative or things like that. But there were certainly things that were slightly more sophisticated than that. I find this area fascinating, and I think there are definitely things there. Microsoft is making some inroads, and at least the way they talk about and demo the Copilot that they are introducing for the entire suite, they say it can be applied to kind of write a narrative around your data. I'm curious to see kind of how good it is, and I think that once again we will have to look at it as an assistant. That we will have to be very critical of the work it returns, and then kind of make sure that we read it through nicely. But it's also interesting, and I've always been fascinated by how much value we perceive in the text that explains what we see in the data. So I remember I was talking to an analyst at one of the big research companies, and his area of expertise was financial solution or kind of fintech essentially. And he said like they offered two products. You could buy one or the other, or you could buy a bundle of the two. And one product was a tracker. It tracked kind of products in the market and showed you month by month kind of the market share and how much it sold and things like that. And then there was a two-pager that came out monthly that essentially made charts of the data that you could subscribe to, and then explained in text what the chart was showing you. And the much more popular product was the one that had less data in it. In fact, it had less information. Like there were fewer data points in there, but it had the text explanation, and maybe obviously kind of in some cases he was putting some perspective, like a historical perspective, or like it's typical of this company to do so and so and so on. So there's value in that as well. But then kind of that was actually more popular than even the bundle of the two. So I think there's a good reason people are exploring this, because we want, like, numbers aren't something we're born to work with. It's a very abstract way of thinking, but words and language is something that we have an innate skill to work with, and therefore kind of translating insights into text is a huge area. And this is something that we've been exploring. The interesting thing is kind of how do you inject, because spreadsheets themselves have very little semantic context. They have, like, there are individual cells. They do have some relations between them. There are some labels. The labels can be put pretty much anywhere. How do you teach generative AI to read the right level of semantics into that and be able to understand kind of, that this is actually the total line, and this is how the revenue was kind of the components of the revenue number and things like that. This is going to be an interesting area to keep exploring.